and let's talk about what is realistic in this market.
That's crazy. So people come to me all the time and they'll say, Sharon, like I'm renting, I'm paying $4,500 a month for this house. Why would I want to have a mortgage and spend $5,000? What is your opinion about that? Renting versus buying?
Well, do you want to pay 100% interest or do you want to pay 7% interest?
Touche.
Right?
Yes.
I think
we get that a lot.
Yeah.
Like people that are renting, they don't know if it's a good time. They think, well, I'm going to have to increase my, it's like, well, you're going to be paying that anyway.
Right.
And for $500 more a month, hypothetically, you can change your withholdings. I used to do taxes in a previous life. So you can change your withholdings and you can absorb that difference and you can increase your cash flow just by changing your W-4 withholdings.
Right.
But it's something that we battle with all the time.
Yeah. Well, look at most leases, right? Most leases will increase over time.
Yeah.
Whereas in a mortgage,
You don't.
you don't. You're paying off that difference over time.
So why do you think people are afraid to go into a mortgage? I've had that probably said to me 10 times just in the last 30 days. I'm afraid to own a home. Where's that fear coming from?
They're not educated.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's Johnny and Susie at the Christmas dinner table telling them about all the downfalls, or they
Leaky faucets.
yeah. Like toilets and all this stuff that's involved in having home ownership.
Yeah.
But they don't educate them on the positives to it, right?
So what are the positives?
Again, home ownership and again an asset, having an asset in your life is life changing. I mean, my instances in Florida, I mean, having my house for 4 years and I saw the equity double over those 4 years. I mean, that's truly amazing.
That's amazing.
That's a good chunk of money.
That's
Owning
a good
investment, right? And owning a house. And so I think that, educating them on how to maximize that asset and the equity you have in that home is really what was lacking in a lot of the buyers that I saw on the fence of purchasing, is just because they were just, wherever they got their information, it didn't seem like it was accurate to buying a home and the process of buying a home.
So what is the process, Eric? Like if someone comes to you and they say, I want to start the process, what do you do?
Well, I usually ask a few questions, right? Like, tell me about yourself, right? I need to know what's going on in your family. Why do you want to be in the buyer pool of going out and looking at homes, right? What is driving you to do so? How is this going to benefit? Where do you need to be? So there's a lot of those open-ended questions that I want to open up and talk about. But the crucial thing after that is, okay, if we're going to start this process, whether it be now or in a few months, you need to have a conversation with a lender. Mm-hmm. So I get to send them over to you and go through that process. But they need to get some kind of information, and they need to understand what that financing piece is going to look like and what they're going to need to bring to the table to start this process.
People, when they come to us, they always ask about a down payment. It's interesting to me because when of recent people will say, well, I've got $5,000 saved up for a down payment, that should be enough. I'm like, well, but 5,000 of what number? Mm-hmm. Because it's a percentage of the sales price, right? So it's kind of interesting because they just give a blanket number, like this number is going to cover no matter what I buy over here. Right. And so they don't understand they may be approved for 300, but they're looking at, $1 million homes. That's a stretch. Right. But it's kind of interesting because I don't think that people really understand what they can afford to buy. And they don't understand that you have, taxes and insurance in there. I think it's so critical. But the benefits are just far outweigh, those items because those are tax deductible. Yeah. So how do you tell them that and educate them on you'll be paying like your PMI, your monthly homeowner's insurance, your property taxes? Is that something that you discuss with them right up front? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think again, going back to getting with a lender it's going to help us understand which type of financing they're going to go down, mm-hmm. right? And I always tell them too, based on what you're doing, if you're going FHA, then now we have to look for a house that meets criteria mm-hmm. to the FHA loan. And a lot of people don't understand that piece. Mm-hmm. Again, education piece is crucial because, if you have a leaky faucet, or you have a broken pipe, or you have a roof that is damaged, you're going to have a hard time going down that FHA route if we don't get those
properly fixed from a professional, right? And
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of things that we understand and we need to take from knowing what your lending standpoint is, and then that determines again how much you're putting down and what the house has to, what
Absolutely.
criteria the house has to meet for you to get that loan. And then we have to talk about inspections, and we have to talk about option money, right?
Hey, talk to me about inspections. You brought inspections up.
Yeah.
So what is an inspection and how is that different from an appraisal?
So the inspection is something that you purchase as the buyer.
And it's optional, right? It's not mandated, but it's optional, but you would recommend that they do it?
100%. 100%. You have to get an inspection done.
An inspection is what? So most people do not understand the difference between an inspection and an appraisal.
Yeah.
So how would you explain that difference?
So I would say the inspection is for you to have a sound decision in moving forward with your house, knowing what you're getting yourself into from the ground all the way up to the top of the roof for yourself. And from a lending standpoint, they're doing appraisal to make sure that they are making a sound decision on giving you money to purchase this house. And so I think I just try to make it simple, right? I don't try to make it complicated, but what we are trying to do from an inspection standpoint is ensure that there are things that the house meets so that when the appraiser comes in, they feel comfortable with you buying this house. Now, if that inspection is not good, we're probably not going to move forward with the house, which most likely
right, but you can go back to the seller though, negotiate certain things, right?
Correct.
That
So
are identified in an inspection.
Yeah, and so I definitely have that conversation of the seller doesn't have to make these changes. You need to understand that, but we can ask for repairs that will make it to where you're sound in making this decision, or to make sure that we know that there's not going to be any issues with it being the lender coming in and doing an appraisal and lending on this property.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting, Eric, because on an inspection they always ask me, do I need to get one, or is that required? Don't we do we have to pay for it? It's like, well, and it's just like what you said, like an inspection is voluntary, but it's highly recommended that you do, and that identifies any potential damages or questions that may be found during the inspection, which they fill up the bathtub with water, right, to make sure there's no leaks or no bubbles.
Right.
They check all the, what do you call it? We plug stuff in.
Yeah, the outlets.
The outlets.
Yeah.
They check all the outlets and
yeah.
those things to make sure that it's up to code.
Yeah.
And then I think it's really critical. And then the appraisal is just a value. It's just an opinion of value.
Right.
And I want to touch on something that you said about FHA financing. FHA financing is a really good program. It requires not a lot of money down, a 3.5% down payment, and we can cover that with assistance if needed.
Right.
However, on an FHA appraisal, if any appliance that's in the home, that appliance has to be working.
Yeah.
And that's a general rule of thumb. And so you have to be able to go in there and take a shower. You have to be able to, shower. You have to be able to shave. You have to be able to use the bathroom. And those are the fundamental issues. There can't be any safety issues like exposed wire, exposed plumbing. And so as long as you got those things covered, FHA financing should be a breeze.
Yeah. It's funny because we used to make kind of jokes about it in Florida, because from an FHA standpoint, the homes in Florida have to have heat, but they don't have to have
Air
conditioning.
And here we have to have air. We don't care about heat.
Correct.
It's crazy.
It's so backwards, isn't it?
It's extremely backwards.
But we're in Florida. You need the air more than you need the heat.
It's humid down there, right? Really
Correct.
humid.
Correct. So
Yeah.
interesting on those pieces, but
Well, it's kind of scary.
right. But again, we as professionals, we need to know this, and so
Absolutely.
So I even try to educate my clients when we're walking through the house initially. Okay, here's my concerns already. Okay, I'm not an inspector. I'm giving my professional opinion based on what I've dealt with in the past with other clients, and so you want to try to have those conversations on the front end when we're running through the house or going through the house to show them. So again, they're a little bit more educated as we go. So that's something I try to do as well.
So on a new home build, do you offer or do you recommend an inspection?
I still recommend it.
And why is that on a new home?
Well, I will tell you that their houses are being built faster than they were back in the 70s and 80s and even the 90s,
Absolutely.
right? So they are going up quicker and faster than what they have. And I think that nothing to these builders. Like there's a lot of great builders out there. Their customer service is great, and I love working with some of them. But unfortunately, some of the subcontractors that come in are very.
That's a good point.
They're put to deadlines, and they're put to kind of the
Yeah.
the rubber meets the road, right? They're trying to get these projects done faster and move on to the next. And I think that there can be some complications to that. So I
Interesting.
100% will say, I don't care what it is. And unless I have investors that just don't care, they'll come in and pay cash and that's fine. They don't want to do it. They don't care because they'll make the fixes. But if you are, someone coming in, I 100% will say, do an inspection. What is that couple $100 for peace of mind when it could be thousands or, even in your case, a roof, right? A roof is what, $45,000, $50,000 in some cases now.
Absolutely.
You want to make sure that you're spending a couple $100 to make sure you don't have to take on that bill in a few weeks or a few months down the line.
What I have seen, and thank you for that, what I've seen is like when I have a buyer and they go out and they are working with the real estate agent, they go out to a new home build. And so we've been working with them. We might have gotten their credit up. We've gotten them all approved. And then they walk into a new home builder and the infamous, you have to go through our preferred lender to get $20,000 worth of incentives.
Right.
How do you deal with that?
Well, I think I always I always use a menu scenario, right? Like they're going to give you the numbers from the new construction, and then you're going to go to Miss Sharon, and she's going to give you her menu of what those opportunities are for financing. And it is hard because a lot of the builders, new construction, they have kind of the option of giving those thousands of dollars that unfortunately most lenders cannot. But I try to tell them, look at it long term. Okay, so it's all about moving money around. Typically,
it is. It's a numbers game.
It's a numbers game, and so I think that when you look at your long-term investment within the, like how and always ask them, how long do you plan on living in this house? Mm-hmm. Right? I think historical average people move around 7 to 8 years, 5 to 6, 7 years. Are you going to be in the house that long? Okay, so let's talk about, they're giving you less out of your pocket right now, but if you're going to be in the house for 5 or 6 years, how does that equate to what you could do when you're going with another lender outside of their lender? Right.
And you're referring to like a higher interest rate.
Higher interest rate, or are they or points is a big thing, right? Mm-hmm. So like when you're talking about the interest rate, like what are they doing in terms of that to manipulate? Oh, it's a lower interest rate, but what are you paying long term on that, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that there's things that you have to look at that factors in. Again, how long you're going to be in the house is a great question because it starts to get them to think, okay, what is it? Less out of my pocket, but I'm paying more a month, or am I paying less out of pocket more a month? I think there's something to obviously talk about. I think it's a
disservice too, right? So I had a recent client go out to a builder, and so they were offering them literally a $20,000 incentive. You use my inside lender. Now, with the new builder, from what I have experienced, you have people where they've actually owned a mortgage company, and then they're able to absorb some of those costs as a result of the interest rate because they're servicing that debt. Right. Or you have they will come to a broker like myself and say, you're going to be our preferred lender. And so we got to be very clear on, is it a preferred lender, it's an outside broker, or is it an inside lender? Those are two totally different beasts there. Yeah. And so, and the reason for that being so critical is that the inside lender will always be up to a point higher than what we as a broker can provide for them. And so whereas another broker, they have to be able to, they're actually getting those incentives from the broker. So they can get you a lower interest rate, but they have a thing with the lender, the builder, where the builder is actually paying them, and that's totally legal in Texas. It absolutely drives me crazy. Yeah. So I always look at it and just tell them, this is what's going on, and it's like what you said. Here's a paper. Here's what it's going to look like, and then I can still give credit, but I'm not going to be able to give $20,000 worth of credit. Those days are long gone. So I just caution people to make sure you know the numbers. Make sure you're working with a great real estate agent who understands that.
It's a tough sell though.
It's horrible.
It's such a tough sell for me. Again, I'm like, okay, I want to get you in the right home. I
Right.
want to use my preferred lender, but it's so tough because when they say 20,000,
You just can't compete.
it's a good chunk of change.
If
Yeah,
people just hear $20,000, I don't mind
100%.
paying another, point in an interest rate because
Yeah.
they don't understand that point's going to cost them way more,
Right.
than $20,000.
Right.
But it's all about, cash flow.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I will say, Sharon, it 9 times out of 10 they usually go with the in-house lender because of
I
that.
would go with the in-house lender if I didn't know what I knew.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all about, you mean I'm not going to have to come up with X. I can come up with $20,000 less.
Right.
If most people on the street would just say, well, I would be foolish not to.
Right.
And I can absorb that difference in my monthly payment of $150. But it doesn't make any sense. But I totally get it, and I would probably do the same thing.
Yeah. 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 And I think I think the big piece to that is really where are they getting the new construction? So the only time I wouldn't say that again, if they're not going to be in the house for very many
Very
years, but you're going to see in a growth area where the equity is going to build up really fast. You may want to keep a little bit more cash, and have a little bit more monthly payment. But again, it's all how they manipulate those numbers. That's tough.
And it's kind of interesting because my clients, they always feel really bad. It's like, oh my gosh, Sharon, you got my credit up, you did this, but I can't pass up this opportunity.
Yeah.
I always tell them, you got to do what's better for you and your family.
Right.
If I were in your shoes, I would do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So, I don't want people to feel bad because they have options. Options is what makes the world go round. And I know that if you could, you would. And so I'm not so desperate that I would sway them one way or the other. You got to always do the right thing. Come from a place of integrity.
Yeah, because and most of the time, I would say, especially 2021, 22, I got a lot of people in new construction because that was kind of the incentives. That was the thing to do. But they were the first people to call me when they were trying to sell it. And
absolutely,
I would say probably 80 to 90% of those did not go back into new construction.